Okay, well, if you're talking about the civility thing, why don't we start with the Republicans stop saying lock her up? You don't think that's a worse abridgment of civility?
I don't think it's...
I mean, and it's not just lock her up. He talked about locking Comey up. He talks about locking journalists up. There's a guy who said lock Tim Kaine up. How about we stop the lock them up? Shouldn't the civility argument start there before we care about who gets their entree?
In the exchange, Maher confronts Shapiro on the Republican rhetoric exemplified by the infamous lock her up chants, arguing that such aggressive calls for accountability should come with a higher standard of conduct. Maher suggests that Republicans, if truly committed to integrity, should lead by example. Shapiro, however, rebuts this critique by emphasizing that incivility is hardly exclusive to the right. He cites instances of similar behavior from Democratic figures, underscoring his point that the issue of civility spans both sides of the political spectrum. This back and forth reveals a deeper contention, whether partisanship can coexist with genuine calls for accountability, or if both parties are simply engaged in a cycle of finger-pointing and moral one-upmanship. Let's watch the video.
Well, it isn't just about who gets their entree. It's about who gets harassed in public. By the way, I'm not going to make excuses for President Trump's statements.
But which is more important?
Well, I think that all of it is important. If you're going to ask me, I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time, can't we? Can't we just say incivility is bad across the board?
Yes, but you can't be a person...
Why is it that we're only opposed, when you're a Democrat, you're only opposed to incivility when it's Donald Trump, but suddenly Maxine Waters is anti-Maxine?
Because, Ben, you can't walk into a room and see an elephant and a mouse and not know which one is bigger.
But it's not an elephant and a mouse, it's two elephants.
But it is, really?
Yes.
Threatening to lock up journalists...
I needed 600 officers to protect me at Berkeley. Yes, it's an elephant and an elephant. Yes, it's an elephant and an elephant. When Joe Biden in 2012 says to Mitt Romney that he's going to put y'all back in chains about black people. This stuff pre-existed Donald Trump. Donald Trump is terrible on this.
But that didn't come from the president at Berkeley.
It came from the vice president when he was saying that Mitt Romney, the cleanest person ever, okay, was a guy who was going to put y'all back in chains. To pretend incivility started with Donald Trump.
No, not incivility, but I'm talking about the level to which it's at, where you're threatening...
I agree with you.
By challenging Republicans to hold themselves to a higher standard, Maher implies that those in positions of influence or power have a responsibility to lead by example. Yet, as Shapiro's counterpoints indicate, this expectation is complicated in an era where tribalism dominates. Shapiro's response to Maher attempts to dissolve the notion of one-sided culpability by pointing out that Democrats are also guilty of incivility. His examples of incidents involving Democratic figures, such as those who have encouraged confrontation with Republicans in public, shift the conversation toward a more bipartisan critique of the current state of political discourse. Shapiro's stance reflects the argument that both sides engage in inflammatory behavior and that neither party holds the moral high ground on civility.
Do you really think Donald Trump respects the rule of law? I mean, if somebody...
No, but I think the Constitution itself is a pretty damn durable document, thank God.
I've read your tweets, like, about Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Now, I have some problems with her, too. But you would vote for Trump over her?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Okay, so the reason I'd vote for Trump over her is because I agree with him a lot more on policy, and I actually believe a lot of the damage that he has done to the country in terms of social fabric has already occurred. So I said I didn't vote for him in 2016. The reason I didn't vote for him in 2016 is because I feared the damage he would do to the social fabric, and I also didn't think he was going to govern conservative because I didn't see a lot of indicators of that. He's governed a lot more conservative than I thought he was going to, and as far as the damage to the social fabric, if he's already done it, I'm not actually mitigating against the damage to the social fabric by not voting for him in 2020.
Can I read here's something where we sort of agree, and then I'll show you where we don't.
Okay.
This is Kamala Harris tweeted, "Children are our nation's future. We must listen to them about what they care about and give them a voice in our government." And you wrote, "Ridiculous." I'm with you. They're children. They don't get a voice. And I think I know what she meant, but it's poorly worded. And you wrote, "Children should not have a voice in our government. They're children." And you're right. This is where the left drives me crazy. But then you wrote about children, "They are also incapable of fully rational thought, thoroughly uncivilized, and completely driven by immediate emotional response." I can't think of a more perfect description of Donald Trump.
In this segment, Bill Maher brings forward one of the most contentious critiques of Donald Trump's presidency, whether he respects the rule of law and adheres to constitutional norms. Maher questions Trump's actions and rhetoric, suggesting that his conduct often seems dismissive of legal and constitutional boundaries. This concern reflects a broader fear among Trump critics that his behavior may erode democratic principles, undermining the checks and balances that ensure accountability and prevent executive overreach. Ben Shapiro acknowledges some of these issues, suggesting he shares reservations about Trump's adherence to legal and ethical standards. However, Shapiro's primary defense of Trump is policy-based. He argues that despite these concerns, Trump's administration has enacted policies that align more closely with core conservative values than any Democratic alternative.
You didn't see the irony when you wrote that tweet and described children that way. It never entered your mind that Donald Trump fit that perfectly?
Well, I don't believe that Donald Trump is a person whose views are leading in my imagination where the country ought to go. I mean, I don't look to Donald Trump as a thought leader. I wouldn't look to a child as a thought leader. I don't look to Donald Trump as a thought leader. So
what are you talking about? He's the president of the United States. He's not the thought leader?
Nope.
Can he have some thoughts?
I don't know, can he? You tell me.
I don't know. Well, it seems like his only thoughts, to me, are to work with Vladimir Putin to make Russia great again. And what I don't understand...
He's been a lot harsher on Putin than Obama was, by the way.
Harsher on Putin?
Not in terms of his rhetoric, in terms of his actions. He has armed the people of Ukraine with deadly weaponry, which Obama would not do. 200 Russian soldiers were killed in Syria by U.S. forces under Donald Trump, not under Barack Obama. It was Barack Obama who was saying to Dmitry Medvedev that he wanted to provide him with flexibility in 2012. Crimea was annexed under Barack Obama.
Wow.
Maher's questions tap into a deeper issue: whether allowing a president to push constitutional boundaries could set a dangerous precedent. This worry is often expressed by those who believe that overlooking Trump's actions for the sake of policy victories could weaken institutional norms, making it easier for future leaders to disregard legal constraints. Shapiro's position reveals a common conservative stance on Trump. Despite reservations about his character and actions, the policies he enacted are seen as beneficial to the conservative agenda. Shapiro's stance underscores a pragmatic approach, prioritizing political outcomes over concerns about Trump's adherence to traditional legal or ethical standards.
Dude says a lot of crappy stuff.
But why,
a lot of immoral
why
stuff.
have there been 19 indictments and 6 convictions so far in the Mueller inquiry? Why so many lies about so many meetings with so many Russians, so many attempts to have back channel sources?
I have a question.
To get
Do you actually think that Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin?
Yes.
Do you?
You don't? How can you not? How can you not?
Okay, so I do not, because I watched that campaign. I don't think that Donald Trump could collude with his own left foot.
Well, I don't think he did it, but his son did it. The people who Mueller is
And when
indicting.
the evidence comes out, I'm happy to go for the indictments. I'm fine with the indictments.
Great.
Okay, criminal activity is criminal activity.
But you see
That's fine. But I'm not going to attribute to Trump something he didn't do when he's too ignorant to have done it.
Well, he's not too ignorant. He's not too ignorant to be a criminal, Ben. He's been a criminal his whole life.
Okay, but
we've seen that.
Bill.
He's a scam artist. He's a con artist.
I don't know how I turned into the Trump defender here, but is he a doofus or is he an evil genius? You got to pick one.
Okay. Actually, you don't. You don't have to pick one.
Really?
Look, I'm not saying he's like Hitler. But I am not.
Here is very.
But Hitler was crazy, and he was a genius at what he did, which was lie and manipulate people. So you can be both.
Russian interference in U.S. elections, particularly in 2016, represents one of the most divisive issues of the Trump era. Bill Maher argues that Trump's actions and statements about Russia imply some level of collusion, or at minimum, an unusual deference to Russian interests. Maher's perspective aligns with those who interpret Trump's reluctance to criticize Vladimir Putin, his defense against intelligence reports on Russian interference, and his public dismissals of the investigation as signals that Trump may have benefited from, or even encouraged, Russian interference. In contrast, Ben Shapiro remains more cautious and skeptical about allegations of collusion. Shapiro's approach calls for concrete evidence to support any claims of collusion before endorsing actions as drastic as impeachment. Shapiro's insistence on tangible proof highlights a key aspect of his position. While acknowledging the seriousness of the claims, he resists condemning Trump based on speculative or circumstantial evidence, believing that impeachment or accusations of treason require a higher threshold of substantiation. What do you think about this issue? Please comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to watch other interesting videos. Thank you for your interest.